I call the October 12th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting to order at 6 p.m. Ms. Pinyard, will you call roll?
Chair Ron Haberlein.
Here.
Cameron Mesbah.
Here.
Jennifer Willard. Brianne Tusinski. Here. Olive Gallagher. Aaron Woods.
Here.
Andrew Carr.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now time for Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this is the time that citizens have the opportunity to address the Planning Commission regarding any item that is not already scheduled for a formal public hearing tonight. Therefore, if any member of the audience, either here in City Hall or via Zoom, would like to speak about any work session item or any other matter of concern, please raise your hand or send a message to the recorder using the Zoom chat function so that we may hear from you now. All right. Next up is our administrative matters and the consideration of the September 14th, 2022 Planning Commission minutes. All right, the September 14th, 2022 Planning Commission minutes being considered were previously distributed. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I have some.
All right, Commissioner Mesbah.
Page 5, second line from the bottom of the page. Other stuff might be missing. I think that's other stuff might be missed. Page 9. First bullet under Mr. Price, which is in the middle of the page. He noted that when membrane facility was in place and so forth, at the end of that sentence you have, would effectively become redundant facilities because of the MBR would produce F1. What is F1? Would produce something. Is that F1?
Honestly, we did those about 2 weeks ago, and we do about 35 meetings a month, so I'd have to look at the context. I apologize.
No problem. I just caught that and I thought, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what F1 is. Page 11, second bullet from the top of the page. Discharging raw sewage, not sewer, S-E-W-A-G-E. Those are my corrections.
So for the record, how do we want to handle F1? I could go back and pull it verbatim and just send that.
I'm looking at the packet just real quick to see if we can, so just hold on for a second. And if not, then we can consider the minutes at the next meeting.
Okay.
Do you have the minutes there? I just want to look at that page 9 real quick.
Is it jogging your memory?
No.
It's supposed to be phase 1, not F1.
Okay.
Phase 1.
So the full sentence is now, because the MBR would produce phase 1, would would be done in phase one maybe, or would be constructed in phase one, is that?
Mike, is Mike on the line?
I think it may be the word effluent instead of F1. I think it may have gotten just misheard.
Whoever's
Mike,
talking,
can you please introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, Mike Necrelli, senior civil engineer. I was at that work session, and I think it means the effluent coming out of the membranes would not need to go through the secondary clarification process. I'm guessing F1 was really the word effluent.
Okay, so Mike, I'm going to read to you the bullet point, because if we're going to adopt minutes, we probably need to change it. It says, he noted that when the membrane facility was in place, the filters and the two secondary clarifiers that are not demolished would effectively become redundant facilities because the MBR would produce, and then it says F1.
Yeah, the word I think should be effluent, EFFLUENT, yes, effluent.
Would produce effluent.
Also look at the next
Did
sentence.
you mean, Mike, a certain quality of effluent? I mean, anything produces effluent. High quality effluent, maybe?
Yeah, without hearing the recording, there must have been something missing there, but that's the only thing that makes sense to me is that the quality of effluent, but maybe.
I think we should just wait and listen to the
I
recording.
agree.
Consider
Yeah.
the minutes.
So do I need to make a motion to, or we'll just
As long as
consider-
nobody makes a motion to pass it, we can do it for the next, or adopt it, we can do it at the next meeting.
Okay, given that we have some clarification on page 9, we'll delay the consideration of the September 14th minutes until our next Planning Commission meeting. Great. All right, moving on. On the schedule was a public hearing. Tonight's public hearing on the wastewater treatment master plan has been canceled and will be rescheduled for a later date. If anybody in the audience is interested in knowing more about it, they can do what, Ms. Batesshell?
We have a sign-in sheet for attendance that's over here on the side of the room. If you sign up, put your name and email or address for contact, and we can provide you with notification. We also have, I can also get you the business card for the project manager. But you'll want to make sure you sign up over there with point of contact information so we make sure that you get a new notice when the hearing is rescheduled. Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Batesshell. All right, moving on to the next item, work session is the transit master plan.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelsey Lewis. I am your Grants and Programs Manager in the Transit Department, SMART. And I have our consultant here who is going to do a presentation. And I just want to give a moment here to introduce her and just to tell you a little bit about the engagement that we did this summer. So we did a lot of different things. We want to talk about that a little bit. And again, this is our consultant, Brenda Martin. She's from Enviro Issues. And I will also be here at the other podium once once she takes over. So thank you again.
Can I ask for your help with the presentation?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Paula, how is the audio on that? Okay.
Bear with me a second here.
Takes a community.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Kelsey.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, good evening, Commissioners. My name, again, is Brenda Martin. I am a consultant at Enviro Issues. We're a public engagement firm based in Portland and Seattle, and I am here to present an update on our summary for engagement that was conducted for the Transportation Master Plan. Kelsey is part of our team, as is Michelle Poirot, who is not here today, with Jarrett Walker, who is our prime consultant doing the transit analysis. So today we're going to review the outreach approach that we took for this outreach period. We'll go over the methods that were used during the summer, some key findings, and then we'll have some time for questions and to share next steps with you. So just as a reminder, we were here in August to give you all an update on the Transit Master Plan. We have to update this every 5 years, and this time around, we wanted to take the approach of reaching out to certain community members and really being intentional about our participation. So the first thing we did was use the Let's Talk Wilsonville website. We felt like it's the perfect place for people to go to learn about anything having to do with Wilsonville, and was easier than trying to find our own website at its own URL. We did identify Kelsey as our contact, and people are able to contact her if they have any questions or comments. We also contacted representatives of certain stakeholder groups individually for intentional participation in our stakeholder workshop, which was held in September, and really tried to be intentional about having a diverse group of stakeholders to help us get feedback. We certainly did a lot of consideration and thinking around who those stakeholders were. We made sure to invite representatives from senior facilities, apartment complexes, from different schools, and lower income residents and workers, and really anyone who predominantly spoke Spanish. So really trying to reach those underrepresented groups. We appreciate all your feedback and also the City Council's feedback on who we should reach out to. It turned into a very fruitful engagement process. And then of course we're here updating you, and we were also able to update City Council last month. So some of the methods that we took this phase was the website updates, the presentations like the one we're doing today. We also did a community survey, which was available for a little bit more than a month, and we received over 200 responses, 210 responses to be exact, 25 of those being in Spanish. We also did a short operator survey that was conducted by Smart staff, just talking to actual bus operators about what they were hearing from riders. There were a few in-person tabling events that Smart staff attended throughout the summer. They attended 8 community events in July and August and conducted a dot map exercise. And lastly, we did that stakeholder workshop. We ended up having 18 participants on September 20th at the Wilsonville Library. Okay, so a little bit about our findings. So looking at our survey, that survey again was available online. We collected 210 responses, and we found that about half said they didn't really ride transit in the last year. We understand COVID is a big reason for that, but that is what we found. But of the half that did ride transit, they rode more than once a week. So we certainly got people who are counting on and using transit for their mode of transportation. Most didn't change their riding habits since the start of the pandemic, but those who did find that they were traveling less because they just had fewer trips to make. And I'm sure we all understand that. We don't necessarily have to go very many places these days. So that was kind of the 200-ish people that responded, the type of users that we got responses from. We did also ask some questions about priorities. We wanted to know what times they would like Smart service to be added. So thinking about time of day or time of week. Participants were allowed to answer up to 2 responses here, so our total is more than 210. But what we heard, we feel pretty loud and clear, it was more Saturday or Sunday transit service. I think we'll want to do a little bit of digging on whether it's Saturday and Sunday, or just Saturday or just Sunday. We kind of asked the question as a group, and it sounds like riders would really like to see more weekend service. And then we also got kind of a tie for longer hours of service each day, so a little bit earlier in the morning, a little bit later in the evening, or better frequency. So they want the transit bus to come more often, therefore waiting less for the bus. And then rounding us out was more rush hour service, so few folks wanted to see that, and then more midday service. Other priorities that we heard through the community survey were that respondents thought it was important to serve transit connections to other cities and shopping centers. So those are kind of opposing priorities, but nonetheless, they were pretty clear about wanting to either go to other cities or to transit centers. They certainly want more regional service for longer trips to other cities, and they would like SMART to add service in new areas that currently have no transit service. So that was good to hear, and something we'll want to continue to analyze and see what places would make sense. And of the cities that they would like to visit kind of outside of Wilsonville, we heard Canby, Tualatin, and downtown Portland as part of the community survey. So now moving on to the stakeholder workshop. So again, this was 18 people joined us from a diverse group of stakeholders. This was a much more intense workshop. We did an interactive exercise. You can see here in the photograph, we had people kind of draw their own transit systems. Each kind of pipe cleaner was a different length and a different color, which meant either a different frequency, so the bus was coming maybe every half hour, every hour, and then the length kind of was how far you could go in that time. So really what we heard from attendees who did this interactive game, and this really warmed my heart, it is very difficult to plan a transit system that works for everyone, and we know that all too well, but it was nice to have them kind of weigh those trade-offs. They did share with us that they wished it was easier to take transit to shopping centers, movie theaters, little league fields, and schools. So we know people are trying to get to key destinations. One thing we also heard was better synchronization between bus lines and transit systems. Obviously, different transit systems come into Wilsonville, so wanting to see how we might be able to improve those transfer times with the service that SMART offers. They're also interested in reaching those farther destinations, and they're more interested in that than in local frequent service. So we certainly heard from those stakeholders. They want to be able to travel outside of Wilsonville in an efficient amount of time. And lastly, there was interest in providing some transit options at non-peak hours to support those non-traditional workers, students, and retired people. And we were certainly not surprised to hear this, and this is why we made sure to have a diverse community at the stakeholder group to make sure that we heard feedback just like this one. After the interactive game, we did do a really quick live poll of the stakeholders in the room and asked them a few questions based on kind of their experience of looking at the kind of transit system around Wilsonville. One of them was, again, how to get around on weekdays, how important are rush hours. So wanting to really understand, are people still trying to travel to work or school during that rush hour? Not very many people felt that it was a priority. More felt like maybe a little extra service at rush hour made sense. That really checks out for how transit systems are starting to kind of bring back that rush hour service. So that will be something we'll want to consider as we develop our service plan. The next one was how should SMART balance the goals of higher ridership and wide coverage. Those are kind of the key balances of any good transit system. And surely not surprising, they want it half and half. So So, let's try to get that perfect balance of getting some higher frequency lines with more service, but also making sure we can get people to places that are a little harder to reach. So the last bit of outreach we did this summer was the dot map summary. These were collected at the in-person events, so we did 8 of them this summer. We had a map to draw people into our tent and ask them, what are locations that you would like to travel to on SMART? We gave them different stickies, little dots to put on maps, and we had certain colors for the regional map and the local map. So here you can see that of the 32, I believe, dots we collected, people really want to go to Sherwood and Tualatin and then Canby. This checks out with the community survey. We also heard Tualatin pretty clearly, and Sherwood was on that list. For the local locations, we heard the Argyle Square Shopping Center, Villebois, and then there was a tie between the Town Center Loop, Memorial Park, and Old Town Square. SMART does serve some of these places already, and so, it's fair that folks still want to get to those places and that they just continue to be places we understand are important places to continue to serve. Okay. That is our presentation. We'll take some questions, and we can certainly share some next steps with you as well.
Thank you very much.
I just have one question. When the individuals that you had in the in-person, you had 18. And I think there were 100 and some invites sent out. You have any feedback on why you might think that was such a low number?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. We made about 150 calls and sent out emails. Ultimately, I think it turned out to just be the day and time a lot of times. There were a few times when we were reaching out to certain organizations and they had a change in employment, and so we had a difficult time maybe finding the right person to come. So yeah, it was, usually you try to get better results from making such an effort to get people there. But we were actually able to share our survey with most of the people we invited. So I do think that we at least collected some feedback from those organizations through our community survey. But unfortunately, yeah, having only one time in place for attendance, I think was difficult for some people. Kelsey, would you have any other thoughts?
I can say, again, Kelsey Lewis, realistically speaking, it is a lot to ask to do a 3-hour in-person meeting. I think that's kind of a shock for some folks who were interested in the possibility of a virtual option. And due to the game that we were playing on tables, that really wasn't possible to do a hybrid sort of version. One thing to keep in mind that was a beneficial side effect of that is that it gave us an opportunity to have a smaller group and more attention to each person's questions about their system that they were developing together. So I think we still got a lot out of that.
Great. Sounds like you had a good interaction. One other question. I noticed in the rank ordering of, I believe it was new locations, and I noticed that Salem was right in the middle. And so, any other input on Salem, as far as people's interest?
Yeah, it certainly is right in the middle, I would say. So it did not necessarily kind of come up as a place of, I guess, direct interest. I think Canby was the most answered in the community survey, and then we shared Tualatin and downtown Portland, and after that was Woodburn and then Oregon City. So I wonder if maybe people already feel like they do have good connection to Salem. I know we have Chariots kind of helping us serve that area. But yeah, it did not seem to be a place that people felt that was either hard to get to or they were really, dying to get there.
One other key point is that most of the capital is still working virtually, so there are a huge number of folks who would be commuting previously, and those folks just aren't coming and riding right now. They're also not driving from Salem to anywhere in this area, so including Wilsonville. That's what we've noticed is just a huge drop off from state workers.
Yeah, great question.
So one thing that would be interesting for me, one of the things that I always look at from a transit perspective is ridership and increasing ridership. And one thing that I would have liked to have seen, and maybe it's possible the next time, is how do those survey results vary for people who currently ride the system versus ones that don't? Because if our goal is to increase ridership for people that aren't currently riding, then that's potentially a different answer in terms of how we adjust service. So it'd be interesting to see the results broken out a little bit differently.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I'm so glad you mentioned that. We did actually do the analysis on non-riders versus riders, low-income respondents, and any people of color who marked they were people of color on the response. And there was no difference in their answers.
Interesting.
So we do say that in the report. It's a little small, but yeah, we were also a little surprised that they really kind of all agreed on some of those priorities for different groups.
Okay, great. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
We were actually planning to separate those things out in the report and didn't find any significant differences.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, I think next steps is at this point we'll be taking all of this feedback and starting to draft a service enhancement plan with Jarrett Walker and their team. That should take us to the end of the year. And then I think we are planning on coming back in the spring after we start kind of our next round of community engagement, which will be to get feedback on the draft plan, which will also include some potential operational needs from SMART staff. And so we will be back then. But until then, if you do need anything from our team, Kelsey is the person to reach out to.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Informational. Looks like there's no staff presentations on any of this, Ms. Bateshell. Anything of note to say? Fill in some time, maybe?
I'm fine with an early evening if you are, but I'm happy to entertain any questions there might be.
Hearing none. We'll move on. All right. Well, that's it for tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. We are adjourned at 6:28 p.m.